Trump's concentration camps. Let's start out by remembering that humanity has an ugly history of concentration camps. And that's not just limited to Hitler's concentration camps, the Nazi concentration camps that killed millions of Jewish people. There were also Japanese internment camps in the United States during World War II that had recorded 1,862 deaths across 10 camps for causes of cancer, heart disease, tuberculosis, and vascular disease that accounted for a majority of those deaths. But that internment legacy that we have as Americans pales in comparison to the horrid and horrific truth of the Holocaust, where millions and millions of Jewish people were gassed to death, were killed, were experimented on, were brutalized, were killed in undignified ways, put into gas chambers, put into ovens. It was evil. It's evil. And by 1942, Americans were increasingly aware of the Nazi regime and what they were perpetrating on European Jews. A large-scale rescue of the victims of Nazi Germany and its collaborators were impossible at this time. The US government took limited action and saved tens of thousands of lives, but they couldn't save the millions who were being persecuted, and also they did not know the full extent of the Nazi occupation and their concentration camps until the Nazis were militarily defeated and the Allied forces went in to see and to liberate each of these places, and then they realized how horrible the conditions were. So they weren't even conditions. They were on a petri dish, ready to be experimented on and killed. Why do I talk about this? Because there's a history of cruelty, inhumanity that surfaces every time there is a problem, a geopolitical problem, where one population can go ahead and marginalize, oppress, and dehumanize another population. And that's what we're seeing happen in the United States right now with immigrants, homeless people, mentally ill people, Antifa, and people who consider themselves anti-fascist. It is not just undocumented immigrants that Donald Trump's regime is locking up in these concentration camps / detention centers. They are also legal immigrants and American citizens. And while these people are in custody, people are dying. There have been over 30 deaths in these detention centers in this first year, less than 8 months of these detention camps propping up. The New York Times reported that Jean Wilson Brutus, 41, was one of the 4 migrants to die in the past week after a medical emergency in New Jersey, Michigan, Mississippi, and Pennsylvania. Wilson was one of those 4. A Bulgarian Chicago business owner died in ICE custody, and he was 56 years old, lived in Chicago for 30 years, and died in the North Lake Correctional Facility in Baldwin, Michigan. He's a business owner from Chicago, Illinois. ICE itself reports that a 46-year-old undocumented immigrant from Eritrea died in ICE custody on December 14th in Phillipsburg. He was pronounced dead, and the cause of death is still under investigation. There was also a death of a 39-year-old undocumented immigrant who came from Nicaragua and was pronounced dead in the health facility after his family was notified of what was happening and the lack of brain function, and the family wished for him to be taken off the ventilator. Reuters reports that at least 30 people have died in ICE detention this year, according to agency notices. The total for 2025 still has 12 days remaining, is the highest level since 2004. So in over 20 years, what is happening now? And this is what we know. This is what ICE is reporting on. And my fear is that for every one that we know is dying, there's probably at least one more that we do not know, or they are not reporting, or they have neglected to report. We don't know. But we are creating the conditions of human indignity and inhumanity in a way that we had pushed and relegated to the past, this sort of inhumanity. But now we are seeing them happening in America, in the heart of democracy, in a country with the oldest democracy in the world, where we have individual rights, and these detentions are happening in violation of individual constitutional rights. They're being detained without giving them the right to counsel, without the speedy trial, without having probable cause to arrest, without having proper conditions to be able to detain them, instead of cruel and unusual conditions that were reported from the Broadview ICE facility in Illinois, when oversight Democrats were allowed after months of requests. Oversight needs to be allowed into these detention facilities as soon as they request for it. And the American people have the right to know exactly what is happening to everybody that the United States government is holding without due process of law. With that really awful story about people dying in ICE detention facilities, I leave you with this. Please keep an eye out for the news. Please speak up against these concentration camps. Please speak up against Donald Trump's surveillance police state. Know your rights. Know your constitutional right of freedom of speech. You have a right to peaceful protest. Protest peacefully in any way that you can, whether that be speaking into the void like I am, or whether that be standing in front of the Broadview facilities like so many are, and the other immigration detention facilities, and also to push your representatives and your members of Congress and your state representatives to provide proper oversight and report back to the American people about what is happening in these detention camps. Because we have the right to know. We have the right to uphold our constitutional rights that are being impinged, that are being taken away. And if one detention facility, if one detainee's rights are being taken away at that detention facility, it is all of our rights that are being taken away. Because if they can be given no due process of law, Donald Trump's police state can pick anybody they don't like up, not provide them with due process of law, keep them in cruel and unusual circumstances, not give them a speedy trial, and not give them assistance of counsel. And we, the American people, have a right to know whether or not our constitutional rights are being impacted by these clearly lawless detention centers and detentions. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.